The verse of the day is 1 Corinthians 10:21-22, and it says, "You cannot drink from the cup of the Lord and from the cup of demons too. You cannot eat at the Lord's table and at the table of demons too." What? Do we dare to rouse the Lord's jealousy? Do you think we are stronger than he is? Oh, those sneaky little demons. Can't let them get ya. The title of today's portion of scripture is called Lessons from Israel's Idolatry, and Paul is trying to teach a lesson about worshiping idols. Back in the day, I feel like this looked very different. Like they would actually make golden calves and put their trust in the calf as their god and leader. And this happened so many times. The amount of times that God would literally split the sea and then they would still go back to worshiping idols, it just paints a really clear picture of how we worry, we forget, we wonder, we doubt, and God is like, hello, I literally just split the sea open. Can we stop worshiping golden calves? I think today's verses make it very clear that it is kind of easy for us to dip our toes in both places. To say we believe in God, but does our lifestyle really show that? Does our lifestyle really prove that? Do we actually trust God the way we should? Do we actually put our trust in him? Do we actually think he is who he says he is? How we live our life will testify to that. The amount of worry we allow into our mind will testify to the level of trust that we have in God. It's easy to believe in God and to still dip our toes into worldly things, and that is the same thing as what today's verse says, which could seem like an exaggeration, but it's really the truth. We cannot drink from the cup of the Lord and from the cup of demons too. And so Paul is trying to tell the people back then that you can't participate in the worshiping of idols and worship the Lord. They go against each other. They contradict one another. I think idols in today's world can look very different than they did in the past. Probably are similarities as well in terms of money, possessions, wealth, status, people, places, things. All of that can be an idol. An idol is basically anything that you've put above God, anything that you've put your trust in other than God. And if that's the case, then all of us at one point have an idol. All of us at one point can relate to putting our trust in something other than God. And that's when things get out of order. That's when we're starting to open the door to Satan, because we're putting our trust in things of the world rather than just in the Lord. One thing about Satan is he's prideful. Pride is literally what made him fall and get kicked out of heaven. Pride is the very root issue of separation from God. If the devil can try to get you to root your identity or to put your trust in something other than God so that he can try to convince us that we are the leader of our life, that everything comes from us, that we have to take control, and that God really isn't who he says he is, then Satan is winning because he's letting pride slip into our heart. That means we're going to be following down the same path that Satan fell down. Separation from God. Pride separates you from God because it says, I don't need you. And that effortlessly communicates that, God, I don't know if you can actually fulfill my needs the way these things can, the way the things of the world can, because I'm seeing temporary satisfaction in things of the world, which is why I continue to go back to it, because we're a culture that wants satisfaction and we want it now. We don't want to wait. We don't want to be patient. We don't want to take the hard route, because the hard route means we have to deal with the parts of us that don't look like God. I like the last sentence. It says, do you think we are stronger than he is? Pride. That statement is linked to pride. If you think you are stronger than God and you think you can do everything on your own, it's pride. Pride masks our ability to own our weakness. And our weakness is the very thing that helps us depend on God and see God's power show up in our life. So if you run from ever having weakness or owning your weakness or running to God with your weakness, you are missing out on God being able to not only progress you, make you stronger with the power of God. And wouldn't you rather be built up with the power of God rather than worldly things? Because the power of God is what can actually transform you from the inside out. Worldly things makes you feel good from the outside in for a moment. I think today's verses could feel extreme to someone. You can't eat at the table of the Lord and the table of demons, but really it's not that extreme, because if you are a believer but you're lukewarm, you're dipping your toes in both as well. You're not all in. You're not fully surrendered. You're not only following the Lord. You're playing with fire because you're compromising certain things in your life. So today's verse makes us look at our life. Okay, what in my life is above God? What am I putting my trust in rather than God? What am I not fully surrendered in? What am I still dipping my toes in that's leaving the door open for the enemy to have a hold on my life? Because that's what happens. And this is why God doesn't want you to live a lukewarm life, because when you're lukewarm, you're letting the devil sit at your table. You're eating with the devil at the same time, because you're not fully closing the door to what God says hurts you and to what God says draws you away from him. Because again, anything God says is just for our protection. I think today's verse could be as simple as you believe in God, but you hold unforgiveness. That is eating at the Lord's table because you believe in him, but opening the door for the devil to have a seat because you're holding unforgiveness. This can look like 100 different things. And I think Paul's just trying to paint a picture that in order to really follow God, you have to be fully surrendered and really walk out what God says in his word. And I think that takes daily introspection. That takes looking at ourselves daily and running to God daily when any of our human moments or feelings come to the surface, and giving them to God, going to God with those things so he can help us grow from them, shuffle out the bad and give us the good. Be all in with God, be fully surrendered, because it's in the heart posture of being fully surrendered and being so aware of our weakness that God can make you so strong. And then that's when we can bring heaven to earth, because you are an open vessel for God's love to be shown through. Okay?